In Abraham chapter 4, we have an account of the creation. And what do we see happening? We see the gods giving orders for the different stages of the creation. And after the gods gave the orders, what do we see? The gods watched those things which they had ordered until they obeyed. So what was obeying God's orders? Right? In this particular verse, we're talking about the expanse in the heavens, the lights being placed upon the earth to rule the day and the night, the sun, the moon, different organization of the earth. But we, as we go up, we're talking. There's every day of the creation, right? The trees from seeds were commanded to come forth, and the gods saw that they were obeyed. So whether it's the earth itself being formed, whether it's plants coming forth from seed, whether it's the animals being put on the earth and commanded to multiply within their sphere, whichever phase of creation we're dealing with, we're seeing that orders were given, and that those intelligences that were being organized and placed on the earth were obeying orders. They were living according to the laws of the spheres in which they were placed, but they were acting. There's a degree of intelligence or a degree of agency being applied there. They were obeying orders, and this is crucial, right? This is crucial to understanding the nature of intelligence. That it's right, we're not just talking about man. We're talking about the creation. Everything, every aspect of the creation exists as part of the plan of salvation,
and nothing exists based out of compulsion, that it is forced to obey. That is not what the scriptures are saying here in Abraham. It's actually saying the exact opposite, that they watched and observed essentially to ensure and to wait until everything did obey, right? Because the aspect of, the component of agency exists at every level of intelligence, right? That it's not unique to us. Everything acts in agency. Some things act in agency much better than we do at times, but all things around us, all things God has created, has been given agency to act in the sphere in which they are created, or organized is a better word for that. And so that idea of agency versus compulsion, that righteousness versus wickedness, that opposition exists at every level of all that we see around us, and all interactions that God creates have those two opposing sides working in tandem.
But it's important to understand that the world, right, the rocks, the trees, the animals, they're willing participants in the plan. They obey God. They are God's creations, and they live according to the laws in which they're given. And this is important, because it leads to the question to why. Why would lower intelligences that are in less organized, less intelligent, less capable spheres, why do they obey God?
Yeah, when they're not being compulsed to do it.
Why do
they're not being forced to do it?
Why would they willingly obey God? What do they get out of it, or who is he to them for them to be so obedient, to obey, and to participate so willingly and so perfectly in the plan of salvation? And the answer to that question, of course, lies in the nature of who God is, his character, his attributes, he as an individual, who he is. And it's interesting, we get some insight into that. Let's see, in Doctrine and Covenants, is a verse talking about the war in heaven. And it came to pass that Adam, being tempted of the devil, for behold, the devil was before Adam, for he rebelled against me, saying, Give me thine honor, which is my power. And also a third part of the hosts of heaven turned he away from me because of their agency. Okay, so seeing the war in heaven, we're seeing that there was agency there as well. But we see an interesting insight into the nature and the character and the attributes of God based on the request that the devil, that Lucifer made. He said, "Give me thine honor." And then he said, "Which is my power." So obviously, priesthood authority can only come from God, from a being that has all power, that has the ability to give orders and to be obeyed. But why does God have that capability to give orders and to be obeyed? Well, it all roots in his honor or his integrity. It all roots in the fact that if God gives his word, he perfectly executes on that word. God is good on his promises, and he has an eternity of existence showing that he is in fact good on that.
He does not deviate, right? That's one of the things
Right.
God talks about. He doesn't deviate from that. And that the other aspect to that, not only does he have integrity, but that his plan, his purpose is for the benefit of all intelligences.
Mhm.
All intelligent life is to benefit from what he has laid forth in this plan. It's not just for you and I as sons and daughters made in his image. This plan, when properly executed, benefits all of the eternal intelligences that are around and organized by God's hand.
Hopefully this isn't too speculative to talk about, but but before we started filming, this is something that we were talking about, is the perfection of the plan of salvation is that it applies to all intelligences. It applies to inferior intelligences. The work of God is to exalt inferior intelligences, to condescend down, to reach down to inferior, lower intelligences and lift them up and give them opportunity to use their intelligence, their ability to act, agency, to grow in discernment and the ability to reject what darkness and accumulate light and truth. That's the beauty and glory of the plan of salvation, is that it applies to all intelligences, and all intelligences, regardless of where they are, what sphere they're in, how much growth they've gone through, how much experience, they can all participate somewhere in the plan.
Well, and that's why they have a vested interest in obeying and being part of what God has laid forth, right? Because they ultimately benefit too from everything that is happening and everything that is taking place, right? So it's not as though, what we are experiencing is completely different from and has no bearing on what all of existence is going through right now. Everything God does, nothing is wasted, right? Nothing is wasted at God's hand. Everything is done with a purpose, including all that is created around us. And all of those things have a vested interest in seeing God's plan be successful.
And we speculated a little bit on, well, what was the counter argument? What was the counter plan that Lucifer provided? Because we know that that Jehovah stepped forward and was one with the Father, and agreed that the plan that benefits all intelligences was correct.
Yeah.
was the plan that works. But there was an alternative plan presented, and we normally interpret that as saying that it was a plan of removing agency. We interpret that as coercion, meaning there would be children of God would be forced into obedience. But we were kind of speculating on maybe there was an angle to that plan that actually was exclusionary. Mm-hmm. That maybe the plan that Lucifer was presenting was a little more sinister in the fact that maybe it didn't even give a certain degree of lower intelligences opportunity to participate at all in the plan of salvation. It might have been more elitist in nature, where only greater intelligences and greater spirits that had capacity
could fulfill the measure of their creation.
Would be participants in the plan and go forward and that was a very interesting thing to contemplate on, because you can imagine if that was the scenario, if that's what was being presented, or if that's what actually was accepted as the plan, there would be a complete rebellion in the order of the universe.
Yeah.
Because all of these inferior, lower intelligences that make up the matter that's organized around us, and the planets and the universe,
They'd be damned at that
if
point.
they were excluded from elements of the plan of salvation, if there was not a fullness of opportunity for those intelligences to progress, they would have no reason at all to participate
Yep.
and
to
obey God
Yep.
at all. So what that means is essentially that God would cease to be God.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be good on his word and his capability
Yep.
to exalt and there would be no reason for intelligences to be participants in the universal and eternal plan of salvation at all. And so the character of God, the fact that he has charity and love, and that his work and his glory is condescending and reaching down and lifting lower intelligences up,
Including us in that.
that is the reason that he is obeyed and he is universally loved by all the intelligences in the universe.
Yeah.
Because they recognize his power, but also his love and capability in helping them progress.
Yeah. Well, this makes it really a complete plan, right? It's really a fullness. And that's ultimately what we're saying, is that as we expand upon the conditions in which an atonement was going to be necessary, we're trying to set a foundation that we get so focused on us as individuals and other sons and daughters of God. But when we talk about the atonement being infinite and eternal, what we're trying to say is this is bigger and beyond just us and what we need. And that's an important part of it. That's an important component of it. But everything around us would be in utter rebellion if the plan did not also have an effect, to whichever degree it's allowed to, on them and on their progression as well, and on their eternal welfare. And the fact that it does have an effect on all of the intelligence, all that God has organized, it brings in perfect unity and harmony, everything working towards one goal, a unified goal, right? That has kind of a Zionist type feel to it, but that's the point. Everything working in one accord to move towards the glory and the light that God is and that he's willing to offer.
So from here, where do we go? Well, we understand the intelligences. We understand why the universe is organized and why these intelligences follow God. And now we're starting to understand the plan of salvation a little better and how we fit into it, how we got here, the fact that we're here. So now the next question is, what are we experiencing? How do we get to where we want to go from here? How do we now work towards the presence of God or towards celestial glory? What is needed from us?